Good morning, everyone. Enpower Trading, in collaboration with Nkangala District Municipality in Mpumalanga and Future Cities Africa, have the pleasure of bringing today's webinar to you, entitled Insights into Local Government Wheeling and Trading. We have collectively prepared today's webinar with Mr. Mangani, Elva Mvuma, and Fikile Maseko, which hopes to provide an opportunity for participants to familiarize themselves with electricity wheeling and trading benefits to the municipality and local customers alike. We so appreciate the enthusiastic efforts of the district in bringing this to fruition. And we hope that the information will be useful in relation to the district development model, especially in the area of future-proofing the municipality's approach to energy. By way of introduction, my name is Carla Worth. I'm General Manager at Enpower Trading, and I will be your moderator for today. Enpower Trading is a NERSA licensed electricity trader, providing customers and municipalities with innovative energy supply solutions to power South Africa's future. We embarked on a municipal wheeling education project, and this webinar is part of our project to better equip municipalities in their understanding of wheeling and trading, and also to encourage municipalities to diversify their energy mix in order to achieve energy resilience. Whilst there are many municipalities who are familiar with wheeling and trading, there still remain many who are unclear as to what it is and how it works, and how their local economy can benefit from wheeling energy. We do know that the South African electricity supply industry landscape is evolving, and by embracing wheeling and trading technology, a municipality can adapt to using its network to drive new municipal revenues, offer an electricity service to customers at a reduced cost, and also to provide their communities with access to reliable energy, all of which drives local economic development. An introduction to our speakers. Please may I welcome Josh Dippenaar from Sustainable Energy Africa, Nhlanhla and Ngidi from SALGA, who I believe is having technical issues, so as soon as he joins, we'll continue as planned. Vally Padayachee from the AMEU, and also Njuguna from Eskom. Today, our speakers will take you on a learning journey, starting with an introduction to wheeling by Josh. Then we'll move into the municipal benefits of wheeling from Nhlanhla at SALGA. Then we'll move into Vally's presentation, who will speak on future-proofing the municipal energy model. And then we'll move into Terry's presentation. Terry will be talking on the building blocks of, for effective wheeling. So the subject matter and the speakers are interesting and insightful, and we really trust that you found this webinar valuable and relevant to your own local context. I'm going to just give a little bit of a background on each speaker so we know what to expect, and then we'll go into a few formalities. Josh Dippenaar from Sustainable Energy Africa. Josh is an energy engineer for the non-for-profit company, supporting municipalities with sustainable energy transitions. And as part of the municipal SSEG support program, he has supported over 40 municipalities develop feed-in tariffs for solar customers. Josh has recently been working with NERSA to improve the electricity pricing methodology in South Africa, and he is currently working toward a PhD in power systems engineering. Next up, we have Nhlanhla and Ngidi from SALGA. Nhlanhla is the head of electricity and energy at the South African Local Governments Association. He holds a master's in business leadership, postgraduate degree in management development, Bachelor of Technology in Electrical Engineering, Heavy Current, and a National Diploma in Power Engineering. Mr. Ngidi is a registered professional engineer with EXA and a member of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers. He is also an alumni at the United States International Leadership Program. Mr. Ngidi has substantial regulatory experience, having worked for NERSA, as well as several years' experience in local government utilities and Eskom. In his current position at SALGA, Mr. Ngidi plays a pivotal role in the industry, advocating for policy reforms, enabling the municipalities to embrace the current energy transitions and to achieve smart and sustainable energy business models. Then we have Mr. Vally Padayachee, strategic advisor at the AMEU, which is the Association of Municipal Electricity Utilities of South Africa. Mr. Padayachee is also an executive officer at the Power Institute of South Africa. Vally is a seasoned power and energy executive, a professional chartered engineer, professional chartered director, corporate governance specialist, project risk and enterprise business risk management specialist, that was a mouthful, who has accumulated over 40 years working experience in these sectors and a significant working stint as former Eskom generation executive, as well as a former senior executive at City Power in Johannesburg. He is recognized as a leading expert and thought leader in power and energy-related matters. Welcome, Mr. Padayachee. And lastly, but certainly not least, Terry Njuguna. Welcome, Terry. Terry works at Eskom in the pricing intelligence section, specifically pricing and forecasting. Ms. Njuguna has led the development and implementation of Eskom cost-to-serve services for the past 16 years. Terry has provided SME support to SALGA for the development of a model currently used in its cost of supply study, capacity building program for medium to small size municipalities. Terry's expertise includes electricity tariff adjustment and tariff modeling, energy regulation methodologies, and tariff increase applications and implementation. More recently, Ms. Njuguna is leading the transformation of energy trading at Eskom Distribution with the pursuit of a just energy transition and aggregation. So nothing short of a stellar lineup, and I think we're in for a good session ahead. I'd like to give a special thank you to each of the speakers who has given of their valuable time and expertise. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Okay, so before we get going, just a few formalities. Each speaker has approximately 15 minutes, and thereafter we will open up the floor to Q&A. Please do post your Q&A in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A section and a chat section. Q&A best used for questions. It would be great if you could identify yourselves when asking a question. And if there's a particular speaker you'd like to hear from, we'll be sure to have them address it accordingly. Thank you to those who have already submitted questions. We have sent them on to the relevant speakers who will address them in their presentations if relevant. And also just a note that we will be including a poll at the end of each presentation for everyone to participate in. It's just a way of finding out what you find most valuable, also what your challenges are, and of course, we'd like feedback on how to do things better next time. So thank you all for participating in that. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Josh Dippenaar from Sustainable Energy Africa. Thanks, Josh. Over to you.
Wheeling is an exciting new possibility to address the electricity crisis. This video explains electricity wheeling in South African municipalities. In a traditional electricity system, large power plants generate electricity, which is transported through high voltage transmission lines into municipal distribution networks, where it is consumed by households and businesses. George Municipality has been a leader in the wheeling space, and their head of electricity, Nhlanhla, explains wheeling.
Wheeling refers to the use of the municipal or Eskom grid to transport electricity from a private generator to a private off-taker.
Revenue loss is a major concern among municipal officials when introducing new services like wheeling. To understand the revenue impact of wheeling, it is important to understand that when customers receive wheeled energy, their energy consumption does not change. Municipalities should charge wheeling customers for using the grid at the same rate as they were charged when using Eskom energy. These use of system charges will ensure municipalities will not see a change in their revenue. There are a range of benefits of electricity wheeling for local businesses and economies.
In George, we found that the benefits for wheeling are the fact that we are able to reduce the bulk purchase cost for a customer, as well as from a municipal point of view, we are able to reduce reliance on Eskom. And I think thirdly, we are able to provide a price certainty to businesses and commercial customers who want to start their investment within the George municipality area.
In addition to cost savings and price certainty, wheeling also allows businesses to consume clean energy to meet their climate commitments and remain competitive.
As George Municipality, we are excited about the local wheeling because it's got an additional benefit in that it is local investment that stimulates local economy and growth, because people will be building in the local market, and that is job creation, and it uplifts the lives of the citizens within George. And that is one of the things that we thrive and we're excited about.
Offering customers new service choices increases customer confidence in the municipality, which can lead to customer retention and growth. Wheeling is a new service that municipalities are being asked to respond to. We asked Bongani for the key actions municipalities can take to facilitate wheeling.
To facilitate wheeling in the municipality, I think the key aspect would be firstly to have a wheeling framework established, have that taken through to council so that council approves a wheeling as a service that the municipality provides. Thirdly, ensures that the necessary contracts and commissioning reports are in place. And then lastly, ensure that the billing systems is adapted in such a way that it can handle the wheeling transactions.
There are lots of ways to engage and learn more about wheeling. Reach out and we'll guide you on the best way forward.
Yeah, so I think it's all been said. No, I think that's a great video that was developed with George Municipality and the Western Cape government, obviously, and ourselves, to try and explain the basics of wheeling. So I'm sure the slides will be shared. So the link's at the bottom of the slide here. So feel free to use that video to get to the, to sort of share the understanding of wheeling. And if people have questions immediately about the video, pop it in the chat and I can try and address it in the presentation, because we'll be covering a lot of what Bongani has said in that video. So yeah, I'll just recap again very simply on what wheeling is. And then the second point is use of system charges, and that's around the sort of wheeling tariffs and how it's billed. And I mean, the reason why I'm jumping straight into that is because wheeling really is primarily a financial transaction. So I think how the billing reconciliation works is really the sort of primary interest. And then thirdly, we'll touch on traditional versus virtual wheeling. This is sort of Eskom's launched this virtual wheeling pilot, so there's a lot of questions around that, so I'll touch on it. And then progress to date in municipality, and then in municipalities, and then share some links to wheeling resources. So let's jump into what is wheeling. So wheeling is, as Bongani said, the sort of transportation really of private generation. So here we've got an image of the traditional sort of coal generator or large Eskom generators transporting electricity through transmission lines, distribution lines, and then eventually to the customers in municipalities. Now with wheeling, we've got the introduction of these independent power producers. And these power producers want to transport their electricity through these third-party networks, so Eskom municipal grids, to a given off-taker. So it's a sort of bilateral power purchase agreement. The electricity flows from the power producer to the off-taker, not necessarily those specific electrons. Obviously, the generator or the power producer just feeds electricity into the grid, but it's metered. The amount that is fed into the grid there is then those units are passed on to the nominated off-taker, and in return, the off-taker pays that power producer money via a power purchase agreement for the electricity generated. So definition given below, but I think in a nutshell, in its simplest form, this is what wheeling is. It's the transportation of electricity from a generator to an off-taker via a third-party grid. And of course, for using those third-party networks, we need to pay use of system charges. So many people make the analogy that Eskom generators are already wheeling electricity to off-takers. So we're already wheeling electricity through Eskom transmission lines and then through the municipal distribution grid to an off-taker. Why wheeling is slightly different is because it's a private generator, not a Eskom generator. And so the way we do the billing changes slightly. Yeah. So the benefits, Carla, you mentioned it in the intro here, but I've just listed them here if of interest. And I think Nhlanhla will go into this later. It enables private sector investment in generation capacity, which is critical to ending the energy crisis. Customers can procure clean energy, they can have energy cost savings, and this price certainty is an important point that I wasn't aware of until recently. Is when you sign these PPAs, you have price certainty into the future, which is important to sort of hedge against Eskom price increases. Thirdly, it promotes customer choice. Fourthly, and I think for municipalities, these distributors can reduce their energy purchase costs, so you're buying less from Eskom. And it also incentivizes customers to remain connected to the distribution grid instead of looking for alternatives. So by giving customers choice, we enable, we sort of incentivizing them to remain connected. And Carla, you also said massive local economic development and job creation where these generators are built. So there's a range of benefits. So to move on to the tariffs billing side of things, and I'll try and not go into too much detail here. An existing off-taker of in this case, we'll talk about a municipal customer. So a municipal customer in a given municipality is paying this red amount, the utility retail tariff. So that's what they're currently paying the utility or the municipality for receiving electricity. And within that unit of electricity, so this is just the cents per kilowatt hour, the volumetric energy tariff, there's a use of system charge for using the grid, and there's an Eskom energy purchase price for Eskom's active energy that was generated and sold to the municipality. So now when we wheel, we're no longer consuming Eskom energy. So the blue part falls away, but the orange part for using the municipal grid, you still pay. The off-taker still pays a cents per kilowatt hour use of system charge. And this green amount, or the wheeling credit, can be sort of billed in two separate ways. Either the municipality, and this is the way Eskom does it, they charge the customer in full, and then at the end of the month, they provide them with a credit to the value of the blue amount or the green amount, because that off-taker, the wheeling customer, didn't consume Eskom energy. So they receive this WEPS, wholesale electricity pricing structure is WEPS. They receive a WEPS credit. So I'm speaking slightly sort of in simplified terms. It's not exactly WEPS. WEPS is just a crude term. It may be an easier way to refer to it is a sort of a wheeling credit, but you get this wheeling credit for receiving wheeled energy. But so effectively what you pay is the full amount on the left, the retail tariff less WEPS, so you pay the orange amount. Here is a table at the bottom of Eskom's wheeling credit. So it's called active energy charge excluding losses. And there you can see the value of the credit that the off-taker receives for receiving wheeled energy. So it's R4.21 high season peak, R1.27, etc. So this is the amount that the off-taker will get credited for receiving wheeled energy. And the remainder, so the utility retail tariff on the left, less the credit on the right, is the orange use of system charge. So the two ways of doing the billing for wheeling, one way is you charge the customer in full and then you provide a credit, or the second way is you just only charge this use of system charge, or the wheeling tariff, the orange part. So the one way is to just charge the use of system wheeling tariff for wheeled energy. So you don't do the full tariff with a credit, you just only charge the use of system. And we'll look at some examples of that now. But so only City of Cape Town is doing this wheeling tariff use of system charge. The rest municipalities are doing this, and Eskom are doing this WEPS credit, or the wheeling credit approach. So if we look at a given scenario, we have a power producer feeding electricity into Eskom's transmission grid, and then that electricity flows to a municipality and then to an off-taker. If this is the wheeling arrangement, we've got an Eskom connected generator, then the flow of credits is as follows. So if the power producer feeds 100 kilowatt hours into Eskom's grid, what Eskom will do is Eskom will pass that credit onto the nominated municipality. So wherever the electricity is due to go, so in the generator's use of system agreement with Eskom, they'll say, we want this amount of energy to flow to that off-taker in that municipality. And then the municipality will receive their normal bill at the end of the month, but then obviously Eskom will say, oh, hang on, there was these 100 kilowatt hours that we sold to you, but we actually didn't generate. So then we provide you with this wheeling credit for those 100 kilowatt hours. So it's the normal bill minus 100 multiplied by the credit. And then I think I've put the WEPS credit rates at the bottom here. So most municipalities will, the normal bill will be Megaflex, and then they'll have this WEPS or wheeling credit. And then the municipality, before that, here's an image of an example Eskom bill with those wheeling credits. So it's probably quite small on your side, but if you look on the bottom right-hand side, you can see those are minus signs. So these are the various credits that the municipality or the nominated off-taker are receiving for receiving wheeled energy. And this tariff is called gen wheeling. And then what the municipality does is the municipality then passes those credits on to the off-taker. So the off-taker will then pay the normal full bill, the utility retail tariffs, the full bill, minus these WEPS credits or wheeling credits. So it's this credit mechanism that that is passed along. And obviously in return for receiving these credits, the off-taker pays the power producer at the PPA price. So in order for there to be a cost saving for the off-taker, the PPA price needs to be less than the credit that they receive. So this active energy charge excluding losses is effectively what the generators are competing with in the wheeling scenario for there to be a price saving. Yeah, so I hope that's explained clearly enough. So this, what we've explained, this wheeling credit, passing this wheeling credit on is being called now the sort of traditional wheeling approach. The credit is passed to the municipality and then to the off-taker. Now with a virtual wheeling approach, and I'm not sure, Terry, if you'll be going into this in more detail, but just to say in a very high level, sort of in a nutshell, the virtual wheeling approach, how it differs is as follows. So there's this concept of an off-taker head office. So head office is maybe not the correct terminology being used in Eskom's virtual wheeling documentation, but if you can think of it as a head office, I think it sort of makes it easy enough. So the well-known case is Vodacom, with several towers in municipalities, or it could be a chain of shops with a head office that's Eskom connected and various shops in different municipalities. Now, virtual wheeling simplifies things because instead of passing the credit on to each municipality and then on to each off-taker, Eskom is saying we won't do that credit to the municipality. And instead of passing that credit to the off-taker, they're just passing the credit directly onto this off-taker head office. And then the off-taker head office does its reconciliations with its various off-takers in different municipalities. So the RAND impact is exactly the same. It's just the credit that Eskom's passing on, but by not passing it on to each municipality and then to each off-taker, there's quite a significant benefit to the virtual wheeling. And the first one of those is we avoid amending supply agreements with each municipality. So instead of saying, okay, municipality, you're now going to receive these credits, And then the municipality has to pay quite a hefty security deposits for a new supply agreement. We avoid doing that because we just pass the credits on to the off-taker's head office, or some Eskom connected customer, or just some sort of independent party or related party. So that avoiding the amending the supply agreements is a big potential benefit. Obviously, virtual wheeling is still in its sort of infancy and pilot stage, and it's not proven, but this is the concept. And secondly, we avoid having to update all the municipal billing systems to pass these credits along. Now, we know that there's obviously 164 licensed distributors, and updating all the billing systems to pass this wheeling credit along is a huge piece of work, and maybe not something we'll be able to avoid, but the virtual wheeling model at least does do that. So that's also a significant benefit, is that you can just sort of expedite the process of passing these credits along. So I hope that sort of summarizes the virtual wheeling in a nutshell. Now, a second scenario is where the generator is connected to a local municipality. So previously we were looking at the scenario of an Eskom connected generator. This is different because now the generator is within the same municipality as the off-taker. So there's a generator in Ekurhuleni wheeling to an off-taker in Ekurhuleni. And obviously the municipality would want this because they want local generators. It's good for the local economy. This reduces the municipality's reliance on Eskom because there'll actually be a kilowatt hour purchase reduction on their Eskom account because there's local generation. Of course, this scenario also has a range of technical challenges because the municipality needs to facilitate the connection of these generators, which can be quite challenging for municipalities that don't have grid access units and don't have experience meeting all the grid code requirements that these large generators need to fulfill. So not only that, there's also a change in power flow. So previously the electricity flow, the load flow on the municipal grid was exactly the same because it's just electricity flowing from the Eskom intake to an off-taker, whereas now we actually have a change in energy flows on the local grid because there's this local generation. So it requires updated planning and operations on the municipality's part. But it poses all these fantastic benefits of reduced energy purchases and local economic development. So there is real interest for municipalities to realize this scenario. Anyway, let me not waffle on too much. The billing in this one looks as follows. So one of these generators feeds 100 kilowatt hours into the grid. Now, the previously we had that lovely wheeling credit that Eskom generated for the municipality, or Eskom developed the wheeling credit. Now there's no such because Eskom is not even aware of this really. So the kilowatt hour purchases reduces on the Eskom account for the municipality, but there's no credit. So in this case, the municipality needs to generate the credit. So in their billing system, so 100 kilowatt hours reduction, roughly, plus minus some losses, depending. But there's this energy reduction. But the municipality needs to meter that generator or power producer and actually develop this credit. So the same principle holds. The customers charge the full retail price for all energy, and then there's this credit. So effectively, the customers only charge the use of system charge for wheeled energy. I hope that makes sense. So to look at to put these credits and use of system charges into numbers, so to look at City of Cape Town's use of system charge. So there's a strong statement made in the video, and when we also sort of making the statement right now that wheeling is revenue neutral for municipalities. And I think that's really fundamental to the success of wheeling, is that municipalities or distributors need to know that when they offer wheeling, municipalities or distributors can continue to recover their use of system charges. They'll still need to maintain their substations. They still need to meter that customer. They still need to have all the staff generating bills, etc. So there's no cost reduction from a municipality or distribution utilities perspective when they offer wheeling. There might actually be a slight increase in costs because it's additional admin. Small costs, but let's just call it revenue neutrality is what we're striving for if we want to see successful wheeling. And looking at City of Cape Town's example, here is the WEPS, or the active energy charge at the top, the wheeling credit, and below that is Cape Town's MV time of use, large power user on a medium voltage energy charges. So a customer on City of Cape Town's network pays R5.15 at high season peak, 182 high season standard, etc. And at the top is the WEPS credit. So we said that either the one way of wheeling is you charge the customer the full gray amount and you credit them the green amount, or a second approach is that you don't charge them the gray amount on wheeled energy, you only charge them an explicit use of system charge. So Cape Town does the explicit use of system charge approach, which is shown below. So for receiving wheeled energy on Cape Town's network, you'll pay, in high season peak, you'll pay 93 cents. And standard, you'll pay 54 cents. So this is the use of system wheeling tariff. Now, the point I wanted to make here is that the high season peak less the WEPS rate, calculations shown there, 515 less 421 equals 93.47, which is the exact use of system charge that Cape Town is charging. So either you do it by charging the customer 93 cents, or you charge them the R5.15 and credit them the 421. It equates to the exact same thing. It's just a different way of doing it on the billing system. So this revenue neutrality, I think, is a really key point that we're trying to make. So looking into the future, 5 or 10 years down the line, there's a lot of market reform happening in South Africa. The ERA amendment bill is moving towards a market operator, etc. And I think the point of wheeling and why there's this huge push for wheeling is that wheeling is a short-term priority on the left-hand side. What we're trying to do here is leverage capacity onto the network. The bullet points on the bottom left saying that the system has a strong base load to manage this increased variability. And that's why even Eskom is supporting wheeling, and Eskom is implementing this monthly billing reconciliation across time of use periods. So it's causing a slight imbalance. I haven't gone into the billing approaches here, but the alternative is, of course, is to do it half hourly, matching supply and demand like Cape Town's doing it. But Eskom's and the sort of approach in the short term is to try and leverage capacity on the network. In the longer term, on the right-hand side, we want to move towards efficiency and a fair system. And for that, much more accurate supply and demand balancing is required. But the market rules will address this in the long term. And for the short term, we're saying that this monthly billing, this credit mechanism is fine. We need capacity on the network, but in the longer term, things will move towards a more sophisticated market approach. So just wanted to sort of show that there is a slight trade-off, but it's intentional, and that the existing sort of wheeling frameworks being developed are really focusing on the left-hand side here. Just about to wrap up, I think to highlight some municipal progress to date, Nelson Mandela Bay, George Municipality, City of Cape Town, City of Ekurhuleni have been really the front runners. And there's other municipalities listed below that are also really trying to make movements towards implementing wheeling. All that municipal progress is documented in the SALGA status of wheeling report, and I'm sure Nhlanhla will speak more to it. They're the steps that a municipality needs to take on the right-hand side: get staff buy-in, develop a policy, get council approval, develop tariffs, wheeling agreements, and then update billing systems and open the market. There's a link also provided below. And here are some other wheeling resources that we've developed with the Western Cape government. Wheeling revenue impact model, some template guidelines and agreements, etc. I think that's all from me, Carla. Hopefully that was a useful sort of intro to the discussion. I didn't want to get into too much of the juicy things because I think other people might be presenting on that. Okay, I see I turned my video off. Cool.
Thanks, Josh. Yes, that was extremely useful in providing a really thorough understanding around wheeling and also landing that concept of revenue neutrality, which I also think is really important in today's forum. Whilst we get Mr. Ngidi ready to present his screen, we are going to do a quick poll. So Dan is going to put a poll up, and if you wouldn't mind, please participating in the poll. So the question is, what aspects of electricity wheeling are you most interested in learning about? Is it regulatory frameworks and policies? Is it technical infrastructure and grid integration? Possibly cost analysis and economic considerations, or case studies and real-world applications? If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to fill out the poll, and then we can move on to our second speaker. And then if I can just ask Mr. Nhlanhla Ngidi to please get his presentation ready to present, and I'll be introducing him next.
Good morning.
There you are. Good morning, Mr. Ngidi. How are you?
I'm okay, and I'm sorry for being delayed. I was actually on a call with our president.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, there's
No
always something
needed.
There's always something urgent every time. So yeah, I'm even lucky to be making it here. So I'm going to thank you very much for the opportunity and for the invitation to this webinar. Very important webinar also in my view. You know, I was looking at the panel and I'm thinking there's a risk here we could talk about the same thing, all of us. But it's not a problem. I'll try not to repeat what has already been said by Josh. My presentation is about talking about benefits for municipalities, especially when it relates to wheeling. If I was to directly answer the question, what are the benefits? My presentation would be over in the next 10 seconds. Because we haven't documented any benefits yet. Everything we are saying about the benefits, about the possible benefits, we are basically advocating for wheeling to take place. And in theory, we are talking about all the benefits or the possible benefits that can take place because of wheeling. So I think maybe at some point, continuing with these webinars, let's get the entities that are busy making applications to municipalities and Eskom, maybe to talk about in practice, how have they seen benefits for their counterparts, which would be Eskom or municipalities? Because the way we're talking about it now, I don't want to use negative language. That's probably say, you know, benefits of wheeling, as we talk about it, are a fallacy because we haven't really seen anything. I don't want to call them a fallacy, but let's call it, we are advocating because we are positive about all these benefits that might come to municipalities, but there's no benefit that has been documented as yet. So everything we're saying now is we're talking about what is happening in theory. So I'm going to move my slides. I'm not going to talk about what is wheeling. I think Josh has explained it quite nicely. And basically, I think Josh just covered everything that could have stricken a good conversation for the whole panel. I mean, he just covered all the basis for wheeling in Eskom and municipalities, what would be the possible tariff structures, what are the possible options for wheeling. But basically, obviously, I'm here, I have time allocated, so I'm going to briefly talk about, you know, some of the benefits that we foresee. Obviously, in theory, we're saying there's going to be cost savings from municipalities, okay, by using existing transmission for the IPPs or power producers. Definitely, there is going to be cost savings there for them because they don't have to build an infrastructure that costs $1 million, right? And which now begs, it doesn't even beg, it's actually bring us to the point where obviously all of us have to agree that the existing grid also has to be compensated, and it has to be compensated correctly. And that's where the crux of the matter is, because I'm going to ask towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to ask a very controversial question, which is always a pain point when I ask it. I sound like as SALGA, we are protecting the turf of municipalities, but it's not necessarily the case. We're asking the questions that are difficult to answer, but if answered, they would actually make everyone feel that the field is leveled. So there is no one who's actually losing out, and everyone is benefiting about this. Obviously, improved reliability and energy security. We see what is happening with load shedding. There's a lot of shortage of power, and also some of the big companies in municipalities and Eskom, they are getting a whole lot of targets from their international shareholders. I'll make one example. eThekwini Municipality or eThekwini Metro, its biggest or its number one customer, which is Toyota, has actually told them that in 2030, if we are not consuming 100% green energy, we are saying goodbye to eThekwini. So that is not just Toyota that is actually doing that. So it's happening all over the place. Hewlett Aluminium in Pietermaritzburg, Sunduzi is already wanting to supplement 20 megawatts of what it's supplied by the municipality. Obviously, there's also a wheeling arrangement that is there, which interestingly doesn't show revenue neutrality from what you see in terms of what is being proposed on the table. So, like it or not, someone is bound to lose in this setup, and businesses like that. So we must not really feel like maybe we are being negative about wheeling or any change that happens. Someone is bound to lose something. But I think the answer to it is everyone has to be positive about change and try to rearrange themselves so that they remain relevant within the changing environment. There's a talk about social benefits as well, promoting competition. I'm not sure what competition exactly, because at this point in time, we don't really have a market for now. So we are not necessarily creating competition. We are creating contestation. This is what is happening. So also flexibility. Yes, customers may also benefit from the greater flexibility of, obviously, of having the other options for supply. Obviously, for the big corporates, for example, that I did with Toyota, Hewlett Aluminium, I think a lot are coming. They are given quite stringent clean energy targets. And obviously, the municipalities and even the Eskom are going to be at the receiving end of it, unless we really, really move faster in creating the energy market that the Electricity Regulation Act is actually trying to do, because that is where now the roles are going to be clear, who's doing what. But also we have to talk about, okay, some of the wheeling arrangements that we already have now, how are they going to work in the energy market? Obviously, because at distribution level, we foresee Eskom in municipalities being electric services provider, and also being retailers, because they already have those two businesses embedded into their business units. So it could be easy to them to just disband and ring fence those two business units, network services provider and retail. So now when we talk about, obviously, those that are already willing now in municipalities, I think a question would be, are they now going to register in the market and participate at the market level? Where now all these corporates that are sitting in municipalities can actually confirm buying green energy from the market and not necessarily from someone that they have a bilateral contract with. So that's a question worth also discussing at some point. Since we're moving towards the market, and we envisage that the independent system and market operator would be buying all the generation that is there, and actually just sending price signals to the market everyone, procure using the rules of the market. So from the South African perspective, obviously, the IPPs, as I said, they will be able to obviously supply customers that are already sitting in municipalities and Eskom. They can also save costs from not having to build infrastructure that is worth millions. Also, they are very close to the system, so there is not going to be any connection facilities that are going to be built because they're going to be very close to the networks. So from the municipal perspective, what we foresee is that obviously it's going to be a new business model for municipalities, but I think we still need practical, presentations or reports that tells us about how wheeling in Eskom or in municipality, how the proliferation of wheeling has affected the business positively or negatively. I think that I'm very, very eager to see, that report or presentation at some point, and I would really like to hear it also from the IPPs themselves. Customer perspective, obviously, the customers now, we know there's a lot of, or the sense of unhappiness, which is very apparent, especially about load shedding. But there's always been also a sense of unhappiness around reliability at the distribution level. So basically, it means now some customers that have the means to do so, they will be able, because obviously the law of the land is that we cannot discriminate anyone from the grid. So these customers, it means these customers can get pretty much anyone to actually supply them, which obviously is a good thing when you're a customer, because it means now you are not a captive customer. You're basically a customer with options. Bottlenecks, I think those have been discussed at great length. So I think what is coming out the most is lack of understanding of the transactions, the process itself, and even the framework, especially for municipalities, and even the capacity for municipalities to do so. I think that is what coming up the most. And also there's issue around Eskom deposits and security payments for credit control purposes. So where we still have a standoff around when there's going to be a wheeling arrangement that is done through Eskom and a municipality, and Eskom is adamant that there should be some deposits or security payments that are actually are paid within this arrangement. And we know this is one of the pain issues also, even for municipalities procuring power from IPPs directly themselves, because IPPs require a lot of securities also. I'll make one example. The city of Cape Town is currently trying to do its own energy procurement program, and the investors or the project developers are seeking about 500 million of securities just before they sign the PPA. Basically, that security is if you happen to default, we want to make sure that we have this 500 million coming from you in cash. So when I say in cash, I'm not saying literally, obviously. So one question would be, which municipality is sitting with 500 million reserves? Because I think even the city of Cape Town is not even there. So these are some of the challenges. I'm just extending issues around securities and the risk that municipalities are being asked to take by the project developers. Then there's medium-term bottlenecks, obviously, which is a lack of investment on smart metering and billing systems, lack of unbundled tariffs in some municipalities, and lack of up-to-date electricity cost of supply studies, which we are really trying hard to do through some training and assisting of municipalities. Obviously, financial risk, I've already talked to it. Municipalities at most, they are seen as financial risk. Long term, obviously, network capacity. That is going to be our next crisis, because our infrastructure right now, the backlog for renewal or reinforcement of our, or even expansion of our grids is sitting at above 120 billion, which is something that is almost impossible. I mean, government is already pleading poverty from national treasury. So you don't have any place where 120 billion can be actually covered. And that also presents an opportunity for IPPs to actually come into the space of assisting in the extension of infrastructure, but not necessarily to take away the role of the future role of municipalities of being network services provider in the energy markets, because that is what we are eyeing for as a distribution sector, that we are going to be our business is going to be made sustainable by us being network services provider. So basically, we want to see the IPPs getting into triple P kind of arrangements with municipalities for the purposes of strengthening the grids, expanding the grid, increasing the capacity of the grid. But eventually, obviously, you want to have an arrangement where it's built, build, operate, and transfer kind of arrangements, transfer back to municipality or back to Eskom. Recently, we've had a meeting with NESA. NESA is inundated with a lot of project developers who wants now to be licensed to be, network services providers. They want to build their own networks, to their own, to their own customers, etc., etc. So this is another debate. It's going to be a huge debate that's going to come, because we're going to see a whole lot of, debates around protecting the role as per the Constitution, and also, concerns around what you call orderly development of the sector, because we're going to start now. We already have a fragmented distribution sector, which has about 167 distributors. So we don't want to increase that to more than 200. Already we are trying to reform the sector so that we get rid of this fragmentation. So yeah, you're going to be seeing that a lot in the future. A lot of debates around the private companies wanting to build the grid at a distribution level. So some of the reforms that are needed, obviously, we are doing that, engaging municipalities, making sure that we're training them, making sure that we are assisting them to rearrange their business units or even their energy strategies to talk to the new dispensation, which is obviously what we're talking about now, the wheeling, the alternative energy, etc., etc. Obviously, we need also innovative solutions, where we need a lot of investment in the smart metering in municipalities so that we ensure accuracy of billing. Also, obviously, we have to, in municipalities, as you can see now, there's a lot of coalitions that are taking place, and they're nowhere close to being stable. So these are some of the things that we have to really, really, advocate for, these stable coalition governments. So as much as we see it as something that is far, but it could affect, because the coalition governments, the experience is that they are not even taking, they are not very quick in taking decisions, because they are always divided. The coalitions themselves, they are always divided. So to get council resolutions for approving a wheeling application, it might affect the timelines or the turnaround times. So the politics also can affect us negatively. So also some of the medium to long-term reforms that we need. Obviously, as municipalities, we want to play in the space of building our own generation or even directly procuring, so that we also have skin in the game. Investing in smart metering, I've already talked to that. Cost of supply studies, very critical upgrading of our networks. The condition of our networks is not up to scratch, so we need a lot of investment there. Obviously, we need to start, investing in balancing services, flexibility and liquid markets to help mitigate future issues and improve the stability of the system. So I think Josh already talked to our initiatives as SALGA trying to support municipalities, because we are advocating for this, obviously. In a whole lot of things that I've already discussed, you might think, okay, there's a bit of pessimism in these statements, but not really. I think, when there's change like this, we always have to be honest and have honest discussions about the things that it might be a blind spot and eventually, impede progress where this wheeling issue is concerned. Municipalities are not against wheeling. SALGA is not against wheeling. We want to see it happening. And personally, I want to see a few municipalities coming to SALGA to present that wheeling that they've signed for has given them revenue neutrality, or they have not lost any revenue due to wheeling. Wheeling has become a business model for them that is part of their future. So we would like to see that. Maybe let me not talk about the whole jargon that is here, because it's also concluding some of the things that I was saying. But I wanted to ask this very, very controversial question. This one. I know we talked about the tariffs, how the tariffs must be designed, and blah, 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 blah. There's legislation that allows municipality to levy a surcharge on someone who is servicing a customer that would have been otherwise served by a municipality. It's a law that is there. But why are we frowning upon it when we talk about it? When we over and above the tariff? Because obviously, I think that legislation was to make sure that we don't undermine the revenue of municipality. When someone is servicing a customer, something must be levied to supplement that loss or that possible loss. And that is in the form of a surcharge. And it's in the Municipal Fiscal Powers Act. It's allowing municipalities to do that. But I think in a couple of times where we've talked about surcharges, the media just went haywire about municipalities not being really fair or not, or impeding progress in terms of what we're trying to do. But basically, let's talk about it. So are we saying we must ignore a surcharge when a customer that we were supplying is now going to be supplied by someone else, but the law allows us to put a surcharge on that person? Maybe in a public discussion, let's discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really fantastic presentation, highlighting benefits, many benefits of wheeling, and of course the many challenges and the reforms needed. So yeah, appreciate it and your time. We're going to move on to our next poll. Dan's going to pop up a new poll on the screen. So if you wouldn't mind, please participating. The next question is, which building block for effective wheeling is most crucial for your understanding? Is it grid resilience and reliability, tariff structuring, contracting, or capacitation? Please do spend some time. I'll give you a minute and then we can continue. Thanks, everyone. We're going to now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Vally Padayachee, Strategic Advisor of the AMEU. Stop sharing. Mr. Padayachee, are you ready to please share your presentation?
Yes, I'm ready, Chair. Give me a minute or a second. I'll get my presentation on the screen. Okay, once again, good morning, Chair. Good morning, fellow panelists. Good morning to my colleagues on the platform. I think it was a good scene setter to have Josh and my colleague Nhlanhla from SALGA with their presentations. It's a good lead up to my presentation. And so I'm going to be adding to some of their comments. I'll provide some clarity on some of the comments that made, and of course, I will give you the perspective from the AMEU side. Just some quick opening remarks for the newcomers who don't know the AMEU. The AMEU is the Association of Municipal Electricity Utilities of Southern Africa. We are one of the oldest, I would argue it's the oldest organization in South Africa, Southern Africa. It was formed in 1915. So it's about 108 years old this year, okay? And at a high level, our membership comprises all metros and units from the power side, the electricity side, and we also uniquely, we have membership of about plus or minus 150 private sector entities who we call affiliates. And of course, we service the electricity, mainly the distribution industry for the benefit of our members. And we are a go-to body for many stakeholders, including government, right up to the highest office of the land, the presidency. And we are a technical partner for electricity matters for SALGA. And currently we're playing a significant role amongst all the structures within the NEARCOM. So just to, before I get to my next slide, as Nhlanhla had indicated, our membership, the municipalities, and I must say it up front, we are not opposing, contrary to what is being reported sometimes in the media, to wheeling. Wheeling and trading, and I'll talk about it just now, is being recognized as a key driver for addressing the load shedding. And we are supportive of that, but there are challenges, okay? And I'll talk about that just now. Right, so it is common knowledge that we are currently in a national energy crisis challenge, which is characterized by the electricity crisis, and this is evidenced by, inter alia, the severe or high robust load shedding and its consequent negative impact on people's lives. So that's common knowledge, its impact on the economy, etc., etc. And the NEARCOM's mandate is to stop load shedding, not yesterday, but day before yesterday. And one of the ways that's being recognized to address the crisis, and not forgetting that municipalities constitutionally have a service delivery mandate, is to procure potentially tons of new electrons onto the national grid through wheeling and trading, okay? But having said that, and I said to you, we support load shedding. We do have challenges, significant challenges, both legislative, regulatory, capacity, etc., in trying to facilitate wheeling and to bring on the new electrons. But it must be borne in mind that we do support wheeling and trading. Now, because of that, we need to address those challenges, and hence the title of this presentation is, how do we future-proof a typical municipality going forward? Because if we don't future-proof it, then I would argue, or we would argue, that amongst other things, wheeling and trading would be beset with challenges and problems. Right, so having said that, as a scene setter, what is the our understanding of the branding platform? And just very high level, the burning platform is that, and let's not beat about the bush. South Africa's power utilities, that Eskom and Munich, are arguably fast accelerating down a negative spiral, and if not arrested, and this is purely from a service delivery perspective, we could be in very serious problems. So that's the burning platform and the case for change. And given that, what is our understanding of the problem statement? So our problem statement is, how might these South African power utilities, mainly Eskom and Munich included, respond to their respective poor performances, current challenges, and emerging disruptors as a matter of urgency, not yesterday, but day before yesterday, to enable them to meet their mandated levels of service delivery on a sustainable basis. So I'm going to be focusing on the municipality and how do we future-proof them, and how do we facilitate, in so doing, wheeling and trading. Right. So this is a slide that reflects research from Dr. Tracy Ledger from Padayachee, and she's doing a lot of work in the sector, and she's working a lot with Munich's Treasury, etc. So at a very high level, in an excellent paper, what she's saying is that, is the current model for providing basic services, which is our mandate as municipalities, and of course, Eskom supports that as well, includes power and electricity by municipalities contributing to increased standards of living, reduced household poverty, and greater equality. We must not forget that we tend to forget on the technical aspects, but our business in life as the municipalities is to contribute to higher standards of living, reduced household poverty, and greater quality through service delivery, which I'll argue we're not doing well. So what she says, Dr. Tracy Ledger, is that the current model is unlikely to deliver on its goals. And then she also argues that the failure of municipal services is undermining all of South Africa's other efforts to reduce poverty and inequality. And within the constraints imposed by the current legislative and fiscal framework, and municipalities are governed by numerous legislative and fiscal frameworks, the goal of genuinely coming up with affordable services cannot be achieved. And any sustainable solution must prioritize universal access. So these are excellent points that she's raised, and that's why we need to future-proof the municipality. What is future-proofing? For those that don't know, very high level, future-proofing a business is a methodology that is utilized to support companies, in this case includes power utilities, in defining the scope, scale, processes, as to how these businesses can evolve, right? If operative word is evolve to meet critical challenges, climate change, nature loss, inequality, etc. So how do we address the challenges, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? In other words, how do we future-proof them? And this is the definition from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Now, why the need for future-proofing? And I've got a couple of slides on this. This is important. Firstly, the current electricity system is no longer fit for purpose or able to sustain the move to reliable and affordable renewable energy. Our grid over 100 years has been made for centralized generation, fossil fuel dispatchable load, not for renewables, low carbon technologies. So we need to move to smart technologies. That's going to take time, right? Secondly, as I indicated, most energy systems have been built on synchronous centralized power generation. Now we're going to decentralized generation, two-way flow of electrons, so the grid has to change. Now, we also globally need to decarbonize, move to a balanced jet and net zero. So our grid has been positioned for asynchronized renewable sources. Now we've got to move to solar, wind, etc. Variable power. At the other end of the system, the way we use energy is also changing. Now we've got a number of digital devices that are growing on the distribution sector. So we need to address that. Also, if you look at, despite the major changes, and as I said, it's been going on for 100 years, the challenge today is how do we manage the new energy flows through the century-old technology, century-old grid. Of course, the physics of the new energy scenario is changing. Now we've got instantaneous movement of electrons, which makes it extremely difficult to control. So we have disturbances, etc. So as electricity generation becomes increasingly decentralized, with large fossil fuel replaced with renewable, these complexities need to be addressed. And of course, the need to drive drastic improvements in the architecture of the system is critical for the energy sector. And this is happening on an accelerated basis. Okay. Bear in mind that we can't only have renewables. We've got to have a balance between dispatchable and non-dispatchable loads. That's why I call it a fit-for-purpose, prudent, cost-effective, balanced, just energy transition. And then, with the rising cost of energy consumption and the declining cost of generation, we need to address this significantly, because we can't have that in paradoxical with the energy price increases from Munich and Eskom. And point number 9, importantly, there's no silver bullet. No one idea technology or company can provide the silver bullet. Right, so what could a future-proof municipal electricity business look like? We're not there yet, but we need to get there. So a future-proofed municipal business would look like a sustainable energy business, which could consist of a ring-fenced, regulated, wise engineering and trading business. Nhlanhla called it a network service provider, wise business, a ring-fenced and regulated wise energy engineering business, or a ring-fenced energy trading business, or an infrastructure asset owner license for energy distribution, trading, but activities executed to a third party. Right, so that's a sustainable. Then we could have self-regulation versus enforced regulation. So we could get to a situation where we have self-imposed practices and processes to ensure compliance, investor confidence. This is critical, you know. We need to create an environment where we get investor confidence and investment. Then flexibility and significantly different approach to the 8-to-5 service delivery, where customer centricity is a reality. That's going to be critical for utility, because customers now have choices. We have two-way flows of electrons. We have technologies, digitization. Customers have greater choice and they can move away. Proactive customer participation and access to utility technology enabled. That's another trend going forward. Then, also as part of the future proofing, we could have one-to-many business relationships. That is embedded generation, IPPs, energy storage. So we could have a number of ancillary services. We could have significant energy storage to stabilize the grid, to make it more dispatchable. Don't get the wrong impression that, you know, on an electron for electron, a renewable electron is not the same as a let's call it fossil fuel dispatchable electron, because the renewable electron is not dispatchable unless it's made dispatchable. So to make it dispatchable comes at a slightly increased cost. A dispatchable electron, which is gas, hydro, coal, etc., immediately you press the button, you can generate and access it. So that's why we're going to be very careful. A renewable electron directly as generated is not the same as a dispatchable electron. Energy wheeling, that's how critical, that's why we're talking about it. Energy trading versus energy retail. So buying capacity energy at the best terms available and competitive markets. The new ERA is talking significantly about the creation of new markets. Now that's been absent in our space for a number of years. So what's going to happen, and we've been involved in a number of discussions pursuant to the market, Albeit the market now is mainly from the transmission side, transmission driven. We as distributors, and I'm including Eskom here as well, and many distributors, we like to also look at our own market space. It may take some time, but we want to create our own discos, markets, if it makes sense. Because currently, if you look at the markets that are being envisaged, we'll have 3 types of markets, possibly 4. So you'll have the day-ahead free market space, non-regulated. Then the second market will be a semi-regulated with the central purchasing agency, and the third market will be bilateral. And the fourth one, you can argue, will have aggregators, both front of the meter, behind the meter. And unfortunately, lots of the Munichs will not play in the first market, the fully unregulated market, because the Munichs have to be capable and good balance sheet. They don't have that. So going forward, we like to play in a market space, but we'll do that prudently. And I think this is my last slide. What is the end game? So whether we look at Eskom and the municipality or utilities, the end game in a couple of years' time, you are going to have all of these plays, role plays in their respective networks. And so you're going to have, on the transmission side, distribution side, you're going to have energy storage providers, transmission Eskom generation, ISMO, traders, transmission IPPs, then same on the distribution wise, embedded IPPs, end-use customers, prosumers. So you're going to have a number of role players. So wheeling trading will be significant business on the network. So we're going to prepare for that going forward. And hence, we started doing that. We've got gradual wheeling. Lots of metros and Munichs have come up with their own wheeling exercise. So blockchains is also being talked about as to how do we facilitate ease of contracting, governance for contracts. And but going forward, and I'm hoping that by the time we get to this scenario, our municipalities and utilities, Eskom, and would have sorted out most of the problem, would be future-proofed. And there's also discussions being taken place that given that the fiscus is constrained, I mean, if you look at transmission, we need another 14,000 kilometers of lines with 210 billion rand. A big challenge now is evacuation. So going forward, a possible scenario, likely scenario, is that the current business model, the kilowatt-hour business model, and I've always said this out in the media as well, is a dead model. It's no longer working. We've got to move to a services model. And a services model could mean that we move to a grid services model. So between Eskom and the municipalities, we would continue to own the national grid, transmission and distribution, and we will look at prudent, reasonable partnerships with the private sector without shooting ourselves in the foot, right? We've got to protect our interests as well, but reasonable partnerships with the private sector so that with those partnerships, being a good service provider, we are able to, not forgetting our constitutional mandate of top-notch service delivery to our end-use customers. So we will continue to move away from, I guess, from an energy services model to a network services model, good services. And we talked about it, use of systems agreements, use of system charges, network charges, fixed charges, so that we are able to survive and there's a win-win situation for everybody. It's similar to the European model, German model, although they're first world countries, but some of the learning principles is that. So I just want to end up to say that municipalities are not averse to wheeling and trading, but we will do that on a prudent basis. We'll do that in support of the law without compromising our mandates and our service delivery mandates. Let me leave it there, Chair, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Vally. Great presentation, really landing the concept of future-proofing, which in this context is how municipalities can evolve to meet and overcome these critical challenges, as you said. And I thoroughly enjoyed your slides on what this future-proofing looks like. So really insightful. Thank you very much. Obviously important to address in order for all of us to be empowered to adapt and evolve accordingly. Over to our next poll. Please take the time to fill out the poll, if you may. The question is, what aspect of future-proofing the municipal energy model concerns you most? Is it integration of renewable energy sources? Is it smart grid technologies? Is it energy transition? Or is it policy and legislative considerations? If you wouldn't mind, please taking a minute to fill that out. That would be appreciated. Thank you, everyone. And over to our last guest, Terry Njuguna, who works at Eskom in the pricing intelligence section. Terry, I'm going to hand over to you, and if you may, please share your screen.
Thank you very much, Carla, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity and very honored to be able to talk about how we build effective wheeling services. As Carla mentioned, I'm Miss Terry Njuguna. I will stop my video and share my screen now so then we can then proceed. For the presentation, what I will be doing is at the beginning, I will provide a transactions overview of wheeling, and which has been touched on by the various speakers, so I won't spend too much time there. And that will just create the basis to have the conversation around these effective wheeling services. And we'll also look into the future, and in terms of the consideration one has to think about when we're talking about how do we establish this effective wheeling service. And I think it talks a lot also to the previous speakers' topic about future-proofing. And then we'll deep dive into some of the activities to just unpack it, because at times we do talk at a high level and we miss to engage with what does it really take to do this wheeling at an operational basis. And then from there, I will then talk about that value chain associated with those activities so that we can then identify those building blocks that we need to start working on to ensure we have an effective wheeling service and summarize at the end. So when we look at the transactions of wheeling, on the overview, I think the three key important elements that we need to be very aware of is it's third party. And that third party is a very important conversation point, because it does state that there's a relationship that's occurring where the distributor is not involved, and that relationship is between the generators and traders and the off-takers, where the off-takers have signed a PPA, power purchase agreement, with the generators or traders to obtain that energy. The second big point is that the energy that is injected by generators into a distributor's grid is not separately identifiable vis-a-vis one generator to the next, or be it Eskom generation or non-Eskom generation. So they're not identifiable. It becomes a financial transaction. And then when we look at building an effective service, as we heard, wheeling will help alleviate and enable much more electrons coming into the grid to serve our end customers. It needs to balance all the stakeholders' needs, them being the generators or traders, the distributors, be it Eskom distribution or a municipality, and the off-takers who are varied. So their needs need to be made for this to be successful. So talking about the high-level transactions and what what each party faces is that the generators and traders need to pay the distributor for the use of their system. They are connected on that network, and they need fairly, as is required by relevant regulations, to pay for the use of that network. Then the distributor is also offering a service to administer this transaction called wheeling. And there is need for generators to then contribute to that new and additional activity that is being done by the distributor on behalf of the generators or traders. When we take a look at the distributors, there's quite a few responsibilities that they need to meet. As per the law, they are supposed to, distributors are required to offer free access to the network in a non-discriminatory manner. So they need to provide network access and the capacity. So we're talking to the investments around ensuring that that flow of energy actually happens in a safe way. And to do so, they need to regulate the flow and the voltage of their network so that there's reliable supply. And that network is aging, and some of it is very old, as we heard earlier. The way the system was created was based on a central point of purchasing energy and not necessarily obtaining energy from generators embedded in a distributor's network. So there will be a need to build, maintain, and refurbish this network. And as increased volumes grow, the needs for that network's refurbishment and maintenance, when we talk about lifetime of assets, is also going to be affected. And then the distributor, although they are now providing the network access and the capacity and the transportation thereof, they are incurring time of use, differentiated costs for line losses, because as we all know, when energy is flowing through an electric network, there are line losses that are incurred. So the generator may be sending out 100 kilowatt hours, but the end customer may receive less than that due to those line losses. So those are the costs the distributor has to face in general. And as you can see, there is a growing cost element there. In terms of the off-takers, you have, there could be the distributors, generally the distributors' customers, and their cost that they faced, first and foremost, is a full tariff of the distributor. And from wheeling, the energy that was sent through and recognized by the distributor is credited to these off-takers. And as we heard earlier, the WEPS method caters for that, whereby the credit is at the WEPS rate. As we talk further into the presentation, you will note that there is the opportunity to be able to recognize, to develop tariffs that are fully unbundled, meaning they're separate charges for energy, networks, and retail, so that the energy portion associated with that, with excluding the cost of losses, is credited back to the off-taker. So the off-taker inherently needs to also pay for those line losses, as they currently do through their electricity tariffs. Moving on to the next part, where we now start talking a little bit about the future, and we talk about the influencing factor using the same schematic, essentially a bit reduced to allow for the additional notes there. From a generator's perspective, they need financing to put up the generators. And to do so, wheeling is very important, because they're able to go to the funding or the funders to show them that they do have off-takers, so that they're able to get the financing to then carry on with their projects. They also need that network access and the reliability, because now they have made an investment. If they're not able to export and optimize that exported energy, then they are not earning their right amounts of revenue to be able to then use that to pay off the debts that they have gone into. There's also, when we think about the future, the regulatory changes that are coming along and have also enabled in the recent past that generators do invest in own generation. Those are elements that are definitely influencing the generators and how they view cost and how they view looking for their forward view. Now, when we think about the future, using examples from other countries does help one to envision, if we as South Africa are starting now, what about those countries that started years ago on wheeling, and what did they face? And what are the issues that they are looking to? Now, a very important thing is that there is that issue of curtailment, and I'll touch on it on this side here under the distributors, where there has been recorded curtailment due to the variability of the renewable energy generators, where what has been recorded is that 7% of wind was curtailed in China back in 2018, and in Canada, a quarter of their variable renewable energy was curtailed. Consequently, they may face penalties when they are engaging or having those bilaterals that we mentioned earlier. And then there is increase in predictability. Renewable energy is depending on variable weather patterns, and with climate change, that uncertainty is growing. And then there is that issue of, if there's so many coming on stream so quickly, is there available capacity for them to be connected on the distributors network? So there is also the potential future regulations that should come through, where energy that is exported into the grid, before that happens, the generator has to forecast a day ahead and inform the system operator. So that context is very important, because if you think about it, if, for example, in the near future, you have about 50% of the energy that's consumed by end customer coming from variable renewable generators located in distributors networks. The result would be that the system operator, without knowing that is coming, is not able to plan and schedule for the next day to balance the supply and demand, which everyone wants to happen so that they can receive their energy. In terms of the future for distributors, I think the issues about the curtailments around the changes to line flows because of where this new generation is located and the associated voltage regulation, and also within regional or closer locations, the distributors, network managers will have to have much more complexity to deal with that energy flow. And then there's a changes also in the time of use, costs, as well as the investment costs that will need to be made. And if tariffs and regulatory changes do happen, then there's needs to actually always put in mind that there is need to cater for sufficient returns for all distributors so that they're able to make the requisite investments. In terms of the distributors' customers, the important point to note, and which does affect generators with wheeling agreements, is that the wheeled energy recognized for credits at a distributor's end is limited to the consumption of the off-taker. So if the generator is generating far more than their off-takers are consuming, they will need to find alternative ways, alternative off-takers, or work through traders who can actually do that type of matching, so that most of the energy that they've exported into the grid is consumed and they're able to earn revenue from it. So when we get to the related activities in the transaction, the various elements that we would need to consider is, with regards to the generator, that would need to make sure that they have the right check metering in place. And why that's important is that they will need to also do their own forecasting and understand how best to contract through bilaterals to maximize the revenue, the cost recovery through their sales of their energies. And then for the distributors, having their meters at the generator to actually confirm that that is what was exported into the grid. In terms of the distributed network, I think we covered already a lot of these elements here associated with the cost, but it's key is to note the network development. That is very crucial in terms of being able to continue providing reliable transport of this energy. The off-taker, because they have an agreement with the generator, it's very important that they also have a check meter to also confirm that, yes, indeed, this is what I consumed, and I got these credits, and this is what, if this is what I consumed, this is what I owe to pay the generator. Crucial to the entire value chain is these data systems. And you note there's a point that's written, which is aligned cutoffs. When you're wheeling, the generator is sending energy, and the off-taker is getting credits for the energy consumed from that generator. So to make sure that you're both talking at the same level, the cutoff date for that data or the billing date for that off-taker needs to be the same time and date as when the generator will also say, at this point in time, that's when I'll consider the amount that you were supposed to get a credit for. So it's very important that the distributor advises and gets involved with their customers to make sure that their cutoff dates in terms of their billing date and the generator are the same, so that they, when they consider that transaction, they're using the same time frame and the same metering data. In terms of the billing and crediting, there is no immediate need to change your billing system. However, as we heard with the WEPS method, there's need to think forward as a complexity on the wheeling needs of the various generators as well as off-takers grow. And when we think about the market into the future, there will be need for that prior day ahead forecasting, and there will also be need to reconcile at a much greater granularity. So it's very important when we think about the current billing systems that are providing these credits, are they able to allow for much more dynamic type of billing? So setting up for that is very key. Moving on to the value chain. The value chain of a wheeling activity or a wheeling agreement or service starts off with contracting, the information management, because you're using data to make decisions around how the credit will be operated, as well as understanding and trying to ensure that all are treated equally by having, as a distributor, to have the uniform policies and procedures, and ensuring that you have the repository in terms of the data to ensure that you're able to keep that data in place, because the distributor is also affected by this wheeling. Currently, the distributor will forecast their purchases, be it from Eskom or Eskom from transmission, based on their sales. And if there is wheeling occurring and crediting happening, it means that they're not purchasing all their energy as they used to, because their customers are receiving energy from a different generator. Then finally, if I can just touch on the product development and training, because that's very, very important. The cost of supply updates we've talked about. The cost of supply will inform the distributor how much it's costing them to enable that wheeling service in terms of be it the administration, as well as managing of the network, its refurbishment, and the other associated costs. So the cost of supply becomes a very critical item, and it's important to start now so that when it does get more complex into the future, the municipality or Eskom is in a position to be informed on how to further develop their tariffs. So going to that next point, unbundled cost representative tariffs become very important in this process. So starting to gradually unbundle your tariffs. If you have single tariff use in a distributor space, that having unbundled tariff sets you up for a much better future in terms of being able to mitigate risks associated with the wheeling, but also to raise the correct amount in terms of the credits. There are a few other options in terms of, as I said, as more wheeling comes in, what motivates different wheeling options? It's the generators trying to optimize their exports. So they may want to engage in different wheeling options. So the distributor needs to start setting up for that and to be more flexible in order to be more flexible around it. And obviously the people within the distributor needs to be trained and educated so that they can also provide a very good service at the end of the day. So coming to the summary, when we think about all those elements that I just mentioned, there is an execution level where you want to make sure that your tariff structures are evolving and they're becoming unbundled, so you can separately identify costs for the use of the distribution networks, and also be able to credit just the energy, obviously excluding, keeping the cost of the losses back within the distributor. Then there's an important element that we don't really talk about. There's a tariff subsidy. The tariff subsidy needs to be ring-fenced so that the wheeling off-taker is also still contributing to the tariff subsidy. The enablers is your capacitation and your contracting. The contracting can get quite complex because we do have electricity supplies agreements, most distributors with their off-takers or customers, but now they need to be adjusted to reflect that the energy is being, some of the energy will be procured from not the distributor, but from another generator, and to allow that to happen, as well as associated issues with contracting with the generator, so that the generator becomes responsible for nominating the off-takers, amongst others. So there's a contracting element that needs to be looked at, which may not necessarily have been a very a frequent activity within the distributor, but that activity will grow in terms of time spent. The foundation around it all is your regulation, and there are regulatory changes happening, but it's important that the distributors' colleagues are very aware of and are able to interpret and implement the changing regulations in their workspace. The network capital, I cannot repeat anymore, because there's a requirement to provide capacity, reliability, and metering. The network capital, in terms of the return allowed through the tariff, are very important to be provided for all distributors. And obviously the information technology, and as we know, information technology projects do take time, so it's important to start mapping out that plan and start working towards it, because it's also a very costly exercise. In conclusion, you can look at this if building an effective wheeling service as a cycle, where you want to consider all parties, even you as a distributor, consider all parties and see how best do I meet the needs, whilst also ensuring that I'm able to offer a good and reliable service. The generator elements are all listed here, but important is to note that there needs to be tariff charges for connection to the network by the generators. The need in the future, you need to be able to separately identify the use of network costs and come up with separate charges that deal with that, and obviously would go through the motion of getting approved by the regulator. And ensuring that for the generators, they are very clear about who they are nominating. It could be somebody in the organization if they're transacting on their own behalf, but if they're transacting through the trader, they need to nominate the trader as the one who will allocate their exported energy for distribution to the off-takers. The off-takers, can't stress this enough more. I think we heard from the previous speakers that there are significant challenges to our businesses, our industry, where they are exporting, and the requirements of their customers sitting in other countries is that they manufacture or produce whatever they export to them using carbon-free energy. So decarbonization is a very big important element for the off-taker. So this enablement is not only with regards to just the generators' investment, but it's about enabling industry, enabling the economy. And then also that crediting, the off-taker needs to, the distributor will own a meter on the site, but the off-taker can install a check meter to then also have the analysis they need to have in place and to be able to justify their non-carbon type of energy consumption. For the distributor, the heart of all this is the business sustainability, and comes down to critically the network returns to offer a reliable network that can be used for wheeling. And the rest of the elements are highlighted in these blocks here. So there are quite a lot. I think the key message here for all the colleagues is that implementing a successful wheeling practice takes quite a bit. And the message is, let's start now than later, so that we're much more prepared for that future that is coming much faster, I think, than most anticipated. And importantly, also for generators and off-takers is to, as well as the distributor, in terms of saying how effective is my service, is to come up with a matrix that looks at all these elements and seeks to satisfy them in a balanced manner so that they are beneficial to all the stakeholders, be the generators as well as the off-taker. And the off-taker also needs to think about those things and say, how do I get involved in this process to enable the area within which my businesses are located, where they need this carbon-free type of energy, so that we can actually build the economy of that area. And with that, Chair, I've come to a close. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. That was great. A really detailed presentation I found extremely useful. And like you said, there are varying factors, many varying factors in the enablement of wheeling. And I think creating transparency around what this is and visibility will allow us to be better prepared. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. We've got another poll up on the screen. You will see our final question is asking, which municipal wheeling benefit do you find most appealing or useful for your community? Is it cost savings and economic advantages? Is it enhanced energy resilience, environmental sustainability, or improved energy accessibility and affordability? If you wouldn't mind, please just taking a minute to answer those questions there. Thank you. And while you do that, I also just wanted to say and just reiterate that today's webinar has been a collaborative effort between all the esteemed speakers, Enpower Trading, Nkangala Municipal District, and Future Cities Africa. So thank you so much, and to everyone for their contribution. There have been some questions put up in the Q&A, and thank you to the panelists for answering them so eloquently. Just given time, I just wanted to say a round of thank yous to the participants. Thank you, because without you, this wouldn't have been possible. To the district's webinar team, Mr. Mangani, Alvin Vuma, and Fikile Maseko, thank you so much again for your enthusiasm in bringing this to life. To Daniel Claassen of Future Cities Africa, thank you so much for your support and setup. Really appreciate it. And a big thank you to my colleagues Fiona Martin and Guido Phillips for all their help. Really, really appreciate it. And of course, to the speakers, the esteemed speakers, thank you so much for your valuable time. I know that everyone is busy. And just in closing, if I'd like to leave our audience with possibly a closing comment from each of you, that would be great. Over to you, Terry.
No, thank you so much, Carla, and thank you for hosting this webinar in such a wonderful way that kept us going. I think the key comment I can make now is that wheeling is nothing new. The difference is that it is now does not involve the distributor having a PPA with a generator or purchasing from the generator. And we need to start small steps. We need to start now and not later, because it's very involved. And in the long run, by starting now, we mitigate risks of not having sustainable distributor businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, and I also just wanted to make another comment for the audience that no procurement process is required for wheeling in a municipality, as a municipality is offering the trader a service for which the trader pays the municipality a fee. So a municipality may have many traders as are necessary, and Eskom, of course, it supports this non-discriminatory approach. So I just wanted to make that point. But thank you, Terry. So appreciate you being on the panel today and as a speaker. Over to you, Vally Padayachee.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the colleagues for their patience and listening. Yeah, I think from my side, representing the Munichs, just to reiterate that the municipality's mandate, constitutional mandate, is service delivery. And we will encourage and incentivize and partner with any stakeholder that assists us in executing that mandate. But we would not do that at all costs. We would do that on a prudent, law-abiding basis, but we would welcome any partnerships with any stakeholder that wants to assist us in executing that mandate. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Vally, and thanks so much for your contribution today. Over to you, Mr. Nhlanhla Ngidi. Do you have any closing comments for the audience?
No, thank you very much. I think not to say much, but to reaffirm that we are in support of wheeling. Municipalities are also in support. Part of why SALGA is there is to make sure that we remove the bottlenecks to make sure that this works for everyone. So that would be my parting shot. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And it's so great to have everyone's support as we evolve and adapt toward future-proofing our municipalities and local economies. Okay, last poll before we close is just, if you wouldn't mind, please ranking this webinar very unsatisfactory, neutral, satisfactory, or excellent. Again, this is just feedback so that we can please work to optimize our offering and bring you content that's valuable for you and your local communities. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic Friday and weekend. We appreciate your participation. Good day.